My name is Ayler. I was born in a small town in Georgia, in a house that looked peaceful from the outside, but inside, it was anything but safe. I lived with my father, Henry, and my older brother, Marcus. My mom left when I was 9. I don't know where she went, and honestly, no one ever spoke her name again. My dad was a hard man. Angry at the world, angry at life, and always angry at me. I was 14 when things started to change. I still remember the first time it happened, how normal it all seemed at first. Just a knock on my bedroom door. It was late. I had school the next day. I was already in my pajamas when Marcus knocked. He was 17, tall, athletic, and the golden child in my dad's eyes. He didn't say much, just opened the door and stepped in like he owned the room. "Why are you still awake?" he asked. I told him I was finishing homework. He sat on my bed. I didn't think much of it, until he placed his hand on my thigh. I froze. I looked at his face, but he acted like nothing was wrong. Then he smiled and said, "Don't be scared. I'm just playing." But I wasn't playing. I was confused. Scared. Too afraid to move. After a few seconds, he stood up, laughed, and walked out of the room like nothing happened. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was just tired. I tried to forget it. But the next night, he came back. And the night after that. At first, it was just touching. Then it turned into something else. He'd lock the door, hold me down, whisper things I didn't understand. I didn't have the words for what was happening. I didn't even know what to call it. All I knew was that it felt wrong and it hurt. I tried to talk to my dad. I waited until Marcus had left the house one afternoon and I told him, "Dad, Marcus has been coming into my room. He's been touching me." He didn't even let me finish the sentence. His fist came out of nowhere, straight across my face. "Don't you ever say that about your brother," he growled. "You filthy liar. You're trying to tear this family apart." He hit me again, this time in the stomach. I dropped to the floor and cried. Not just because of the pain, but because I knew right then, I was alone. After that, I kept quiet. I stopped trying to resist Marcus. If I fought, it only got worse. He would choke me until I passed out. Sometimes he left bruises so big I couldn't wear short sleeves to school. But nobody ever asked questions. And even if they had, I wouldn't have known what to say. I remember one night, I locked the door. I pushed my dresser against it, hoping that would stop him. I was 15 now, and desperate. He banged on the door. I didn't respond. Then he shouted, "Open the door, Ayler. Now." When I didn't, he left. I thought I was safe. But a few minutes later, he came back, with a screwdriver. He unscrewed the hinges off the door and walked in. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You think that door can stop me?" Then he did what he always did. I stared at the ceiling the whole time, trying to disappear in my mind. The next morning, my dad saw the broken door and said nothing. He just shook his head like I was some kind of problem. Like all of this was somehow my fault. That was the moment I realized my father knew. Maybe not everything. But enough. And he didn't care. He'd sit at the dinner table with Marcus, laughing, while I sat there silent, trying not to cry. Sometimes, after Marcus had his way with me, he'd give me this smug look at the table, as if daring me to say anything. I didn't. I couldn't. I started skipping school. I had nightmares. I would wake up sweating, screaming, only to find him there again, standing in the doorway. I wanted to die. I thought about it every day. I wrote letters in my notebook that said goodbye to the world. But something inside me kept holding on. Some little voice that said, "Keep breathing. One day, someone will believe you." I didn't know when. I didn't know how. But I knew I couldn't let Marcus win. Not completely. After the night Marcus kicked in my door, everything changed. He wasn't just sneaking into my room anymore. He acted like he owned me. He stopped pretending to be gentle. He'd throw me on the bed, cover my mouth, and whisper the same awful words every time. "You like it? You're the one who started this. You smiled at me first. You wore that tight shirt on purpose. This is what you wanted." It messed with my head. I was only 15. I didn't even know what grooming was, but that's what he was doing. Making me think it was my fault. Like I had asked for it. He started getting into my phone. He'd go through my texts, delete my messages, even block friends from contacting me. If any guy so much as liked my Instagram photo, Marcus would lose it. He once slapped me across the face because a classmate commented, "You look cute under a selfie." He told me, "If you open your mouth and tell anyone, I'll kill you. I'll kill them too. You think Dad will believe you? You'll destroy everything. Our family, our name, our lives. And you'll be the one who did it." I believed him. Not just because of the words. Because of the way Dad acted too. By then, Dad had turned into a monster. Every time I tried to pull away from Marcus in public, Dad would say, "What's wrong with you, Ayla? You always act like a freak." If I cried, he'd accuse me of being dramatic. If I stayed in my room, he'd call me lazy. If I flinched when Marcus touched my shoulder at dinner, he'd slam the table and scream at me. "You've been nothing but trouble since your mama left," he said one night. Maybe that's why she left, because she saw what a filthy girl you were turning into. That sentence cut me so deep, I didn't even have words. I stopped talking altogether. I just existed. Going through the motions. Eat. Shower. School. Home. Repeat. But then, something else started happening. My body felt different. At first, I thought it was stress. I was always tired. I kept throwing up in the mornings. I stopped getting my period. 1 month. 2 months. I started hiding in the school bathroom just to cry. One day, my teacher pulled me aside and asked if I was okay. I nodded. I wanted to tell her. I really did. But then I remembered Marcus's face, his voice, his threats. And I remembered the slap from my father. So I lied. I said I was just tired from studying. She didn't press it. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I took a pregnancy test I stole from the pharmacy down the street. I waited until everyone left the house. I sat in the bathroom, hands shaking, my stomach in knots. 2 pink lines. Positive. I dropped the stick and backed into the wall. My whole body went cold. I threw up in the sink. I couldn't breathe. Marcus had gotten me pregnant. I was carrying the baby of my own brother. My mind broke. I curled up on the floor, rocking back and forth, trying to disappear. For the first time in my life, I actually said the words out loud, "I want to die." But I didn't. Because something in me, some little spark that refused to go out, told me that this had to end. That someone, somewhere, had to know the truth. I waited a few days. Then I confronted Marcus. I stood in the hallway, blocking his path. "I'm pregnant," I said, my voice shaking. He stared at me. His face changed, like a switch flipped. Then he laughed. "Not my problem," he said. "Don't go blaming your little mistakes on me." "I haven't been with anyone else," I said. He stepped closer and hissed, "Don't you dare start running your mouth. You want Dad to kill you? You want to end up in a ditch somewhere? You're not special, Ayla. No one's coming to save you." Then he shoved me aside and walked into his room. I stood there, heart pounding, hands clenched, chest burning. I felt like screaming, but no sound came out. That night, I decided I'd protect myself. I dragged my dresser in front of the door again. I sat on the floor and leaned against it, praying it would be enough. I was crying, whispering to myself over and over. "You're strong. Just hold on. You're strong." But just after midnight, I heard footsteps. Then a loud bang. Marcus. He kicked the door hard. Once. Twice. Then it flew open, and he stepped inside. After he kicked open my door that night, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat there, holding my stomach, trying to think straight. I was pregnant, with my brother's child, and I didn't know what to do. The next morning, I waited until Dad left for work. Then I stood in front of Marcus's room and knocked. He opened the door with that same bored look on his face. "What now?" "I'm serious," I said. "I'm pregnant. And it's yours." He rolled his eyes like I was a mosquito buzzing around his ear. "You're insane." "I took the test, Marcus. 2 lines. I haven't slept in days." He leaned against the door frame, then smiled. But it wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind that makes your blood turn cold. "You're lying. Or maybe you got yourself knocked up by some boy at school and you're trying to pin it on me." I wanted to scream. "You're the only one who's touched me. I was a virgin before you started. He grabbed me by the arm and yanked me into the room. Shut up. You hear me? Shut the hell up. His grip hurt. He pushed me up against the wall, face inches from mine. You're gonna ruin this family with your dirty mouth, he whispered. You say one more word to Dad, and I'll make you disappear. You think I won't? I broke free and ran to my room. I locked the door, shoved the dresser in front of it again, and cried into my pillow until my whole face was sore. But I couldn't hold it in anymore. That night, I waited for Dad to sit down in front of the TV with his usual bottle of cheap whiskey. Then I sat next to him on the couch. I have to tell you something. He didn't look at me. Just took another sip. Marcus has been hurting me. 4 years. And now, I'm pregnant. He finally turned his head. His eyes narrowed. You what? I'm pregnant. And it's his. For a second, there was silence. Then the bottle hit the coffee table with a loud bang. He stood up. You little whore. I'm not lying. Before I could finish, he slapped me so hard I saw white. I stumbled back, hitting the floor. He didn't stop. He yanked me up by the hair and punched me in the stomach. Again. And again. You trying to make me look like a damn fool, he shouted. Please, I'm not lying, I cried, curling into a ball. Please stop. But he kept going. Kicking. Yelling. Screaming that I was a liar, a slut, a stain on his name. When he finally left me alone, I was gasping on the floor, barely able to breathe. My lip was bleeding. My ribs felt cracked. My stomach throbbed with a sharp, unbearable pain. I dragged myself to my room and locked the door. I lay there in silence for hours. I didn't sleep. I was too scared to close my eyes. As the weeks passed, my body started to change. My school uniform didn't fit right anymore. My stomach was growing. I tried wearing baggy hoodies, but it wasn't enough. Kids at school whispered behind my back. Teachers looked at me with quiet concern. One of my neighbors, Miss Carla, stopped me on the porch one morning. You okay, baby? You look pale. Like you ain't sleeping. I opened my mouth to speak, but all I said was, I'm fine. Nobody really helped. They just stared. Worried, yes, but not enough to step in. One night, I packed a bag. I only had $17, some granola bars, and an old jacket. I slipped out the back door and started walking. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get away. But I didn't even make it 3 blocks before Marcus's car pulled up beside me. He got out, grabbed my arm, and shoved me into the passenger seat. You're not going anywhere, he growled. I kicked and screamed, but he didn't care. He dragged me back into the house and threw me on the floor in the living room. Dad was waiting. Drunk again. You just don't learn, he said. You think you're grown now? Think you can run the streets like a hooker? No, please, I whispered, barely able to sit up. He took off his belt. The leather whipped across my back, again and again. I screamed. Marcus just stood there, arms crossed, watching. Finally, my legs gave out. My body couldn't take anymore. I collapsed onto the floor, shaking, crying, and bleeding. My vision blurred. My breathing slowed. I looked up at the ceiling and whispered, God, if you're real, please help me. And then everything went black. When I woke up, everything was blurry. There was a white light above me, soft beeping in the background, and something cold on my arm. For a second, I thought I had died. But then I felt the pain in my ribs. The burning cuts on my back. The throbbing in my stomach. I was alive, but barely. I was in a hospital bed. My face was swollen. My mouth tasted like metal. Tubes ran from my arms to machines I didn't understand. A nurse walked in, holding a clipboard. Her name tag read Nurse Eliza. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with short curly hair and warm eyes. She stopped by the bed, looked at me carefully, then whispered, Hey, sweetheart. You're safe now, okay? I couldn't speak. My throat was dry and raw. But tears rolled down my cheeks. She gently wiped my face and gave me water. Then she sat beside me and asked softly, Can I ask you a few questions? I nodded. She looked at the bruises on my arms, the ones that looked like handprints. She noticed the belt marks across my back. She didn't look shocked, just sad. Like she'd seen it too many times before. Do you feel safe at home? She asked. I shook my head slowly. Who did this to you? My lips trembled. I wanted to say his name, Marcus, but it stuck in my throat. Your father, she asked. I nodded. She paused. And, there's more, isn't there? That's when I broke. Years of secrets, pain, and fear came crashing out of me all at once. I sobbed so hard my body shook. Nurse Eliza held my hand. Take your time, she whispered. You don't have to be afraid here. And I told her. Everything. I told her how Marcus had started touching me when I was just 11. How it never stopped. How he told me I'd ruin the family if I said anything. How my dad beat me every time I tried to speak up. How I was pregnant. And how the baby wasn't from some boyfriend like everyone assumed, it was from my own brother. By the time I finished, she had tears in her eyes too. But she stayed calm. She nodded gently and said, You did the right thing by telling me. I'm so sorry this happened to you. That night, things moved fast. A woman in a grey blazer came in a few hours later. She introduced herself as Ms. Parker, a social worker from Child Protective Services. She asked me the same questions, gently but firmly. I told her the truth again. She took notes, asked for names, and promised me I wouldn't be going back to that house. Then came the police. A tall black officer named Detective Harris and a white woman named Detective Rivera came into the room. They didn't look angry or confused. They looked ready. Detective Harris leaned in and said, We believe you. And we're going to do something about it. They asked if I would be okay doing a DNA test. I nodded. I just wanted proof I wasn't crazy. Proof Marcus did this. They collected my blood. Took samples. Even asked if they could swab my stomach for evidence in case there were older injuries they could use in court. A nurse explained that they would also be testing the baby's DNA to match it against Marcus's. I didn't say anything, I just closed my eyes and prayed. I stayed in the hospital for 5 days. During that time, Ms. Parker visited every morning. She brought me snacks, clothes, and even a notebook to write in. She told me they had placed an emergency no-contact order against both my father and Marcus. They can't come near you now, she said. And we're investigating your father for neglect and assault. I asked, what if they lie? She smiled softly. We already have a judge lined up to review your case. They can say whatever they want. We've got medical records, your statement, and now the police report. That's more than enough to take action. On the 6th day, a doctor came in with results. His face was serious. We ran the DNA test, he said. And, it confirms what you told us. The father of your baby is your brother. I didn't cry. I just stared at the wall. Somewhere deep down, I already knew. I didn't need a test to confirm it. But now they had proof. Now nobody could tell me I made it up. Not Dad. Not Marcus. Not anybody. Later that night, Detective Harris returned. He looked relieved. We arrested Marcus this morning. Your father too. They are being held without bail. They won't be coming back. My whole body sagged in the hospital bed. For the first time in years, I felt something that almost resembled peace. But the road ahead wasn't over. I was pregnant, traumatized, and still only 15. And the world outside still had a lot to say. The morning they arrested my father, the sun rose like it always did. But for once, I didn't feel afraid to see it. I was sitting up in the hospital bed, staring out the window when Detective Rivera walked in. She wasn't smiling, but her voice sounded lighter. It's done, she said. We picked up your father this morning. Your brother's already being transferred to juvenile custody. He's being charged with multiple counts of sexual assault, incest, and endangering a minor. Your father is facing charges for child abuse, neglect, and obstruction. I just blinked. I didn't know how to react. He screamed at us, she added. Tried to say we were brainwashing you. But the evidence is solid. He won't be walking away from this. I thought I'd feel joy. Relief, even. But all I felt was empty. I'd lived under that roof for 15 years. I was born into pain, raised by it, and taught that silence was the only way to survive. And now, the people who hurt me the most, my own blood, were behind bars. So why did I still feel like I couldn't breathe? Later that afternoon, I was discharged from the hospital. Ms. Parker from CPS was waiting for me at the front desk. She had a soft blanket in her arms and a big binder under one arm. "We found a safe house for you," she said. "Somewhere secure. Somewhere you won't have to look over your shoulder." I nodded slowly. I was still sore. Still bruised. But my body was healing. And now, my mind was slowly trying to catch up. The safe house was in a quiet neighborhood on the other side of town. It looked like a regular home from the outside: white porch, red brick, a little garden out front. But inside, it was full of stories. Other girls, just like me. Girls who had run. Girls who were taken. Girls who had survived. One of the staff members, Miss Tasha, welcomed me with open arms. She was older, maybe in her 50s, and wore thick glasses and knitted sweaters. "No judgment here, baby," she said, guiding me to my room. "You made it. That's what matters." Over the next few weeks, I started going to therapy. At first, I didn't say much. My therapist, Dr. Nina, just sat with me in silence sometimes, letting me cry. Sometimes we talked about the nightmares. Other times, we just colored in adult coloring books and listened to music. She told me something I never forgot. "You are not what they did to you. You're what you choose to become after." Every day, my belly grew. The baby inside me didn't ask for any of this. I knew that. But it didn't change how complicated it felt. Sometimes I'd lay in bed at night, my hands on my stomach, whispering, "You didn't do anything wrong. I promise I'll never hurt you like they hurt me." Meanwhile, the investigation moved fast. The DNA test had made things easy for the prosecution. Marcus was tried in juvenile court but would be transferred to adult court once he turned 18. The judge called his actions calculated, disturbing, and predatory. My father tried to blame everything on me, said I was acting grown, that I seduced my brother, that I made up stories to get attention. But the evidence told the truth. The bruises. The medical reports. The psychiatric evaluations. Everything pointed to the same thing. They were guilty. They tried to ruin me, and they failed. By the time I was 8 months pregnant, I had moved into a quieter part of the safe house, where they helped expectant teen mothers. I had my own room. My own crib. Even a few donated baby clothes and toys from women who had once stood where I was standing. When labor started, I panicked. I was alone, and everything hurt. But Miss Tasha rushed me to the hospital. And 6 hours later, I held a tiny baby in my arms. A baby with soft skin, warm cheeks, and eyes that hadn't seen any of the evil I had lived through. It was a girl. I named her Hope. I cried when they placed her on my chest. Not because of the pain, but because I couldn't believe something so small and beautiful came from so much darkness. The nurses wrapped her in a yellow blanket. She was calm. Quiet. Like she knew she didn't have to be afraid anymore. That night, I held her close in the quiet room of the safe house. The walls were soft pink. The crib was by the window. I rocked her gently as she slept, her tiny fingers curled into mine. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a mother. I whispered to her, my voice shaking but sure. "This baby came from pain, but now, I'll raise them in peace." 7 years have passed since that night in the safe house, when I first held Hope in my arms. 7 years of sleepless nights, tears, tough decisions, and quiet victories. Raising a child after everything I'd been through wasn't easy. There were days when I felt completely overwhelmed, when the weight of the past pressed down on me so hard I thought I couldn't breathe. Hope was my light, but sometimes, the darkness still followed me. At first, I struggled. I didn't have a stable home, a steady income, or much support. The safe house helped me for a while, but eventually, I had to find my own place. I worked odd jobs, cleaning houses, babysitting, anything I could do between classes. I was exhausted all the time, but I never let it show in front of Hope. I wanted her to grow up surrounded by love and safety. A world where she wouldn't have to hide from shadows the way I did. There were moments when I doubted myself. I asked if I was strong enough. If I could give her what she deserved. But every time Hope smiled, reached for me, or said her first words, I found the strength to keep going. When she took her first steps, I was there cheering louder than anyone else. When she started school, I packed her lunch with a hand-drawn note telling her how proud I was. When she scraped her knee, I kissed it better like every mom does. My past wasn't something I wanted to talk about often. I knew it was a part of me, but it wasn't who I was anymore. Hope deserved a mother who was present, who was strong, and who loved without fear. One day, about 2 years after Hope was born, my mother, the woman who had left me when I was a child, reached out. I was surprised to see her name on my phone. For years, she had been silent. Gone without explanation. No calls, no letters, nothing. She wanted to see Hope. I felt a mix of anger, confusion, and sadness. How could she want to step back into our lives after all that time? I thought about Hope's safety first. I thought about the promises I'd made to her, the promises to protect her from pain, to give her a childhood I never had. So I said no. I told my mother it wasn't the right time and that I wasn't ready. I didn't want to reopen old wounds or risk putting Hope in harm's way. After that, I never heard from her again. It was painful. Part of me wished things could have been different. But I knew some people only come into your life to teach you lessons, not to stay. Since then, Hope and I have been building a life that's ours. I finished college, something I never imagined possible when I was a scared teenager in that hospital bed. I studied business because I wanted to create a future where we could thrive, not just survive. It wasn't easy balancing school, work, and motherhood. There were times I cried alone, wondering if I could do it all. But Hope was my motivation. Now, I run my own small business, a cozy little online shop that sells handmade crafts and self-care products. It started with just a few orders from friends, but it grew steadily. I'm proud to say I can afford to give Hope everything she needs: good food, clothes, doctors, and even music lessons. But more than anything, I give her love. Real love. The kind I never knew as a child. We laugh together, read books every night, and make silly crafts in the kitchen. She calls me her supermom, and I believe her. We've come so far. Sometimes, when Hope is asleep, I think back to everything, the pain, the fear, the loneliness. And I realize how far we've risen. From the darkest shadows, we found light. From silence, we found our voice. From brokenness, we built a home. Hope's laughter fills my life now. Her bright eyes remind me every day that healing is possible. And as I watch her grow, I know one thing for sure. This baby came from pain, but now, I raise her in peace. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please like, share, and comment below. Your support means the world and helps raise awareness for those who are still struggling in silence. Remember, no one should face pain alone. There is always hope and help out there. Take care of yourself and each other. See you in the next video.